Bowl? Like, so what was the biggest benefits after the fact of having differences in your social media?
So Andrew's question is what was different in technology this time around versus, say, the Pan Am Games 25 years ago, and what were the benefits? So we ended up with 11 or 12 DePaul J-term interns for the month. And as a parent, I wanted this to be rich content for them, and so we tried to organize some like seminar lunches where they heard more than what they had to do. They learned something else. And one of the ideas, which basically flubbed, was maybe we spend some time thinking about technology 25 years ago, which to you is a long time, to me was not such a long time, in organizing an even more complex event, the Pan American Games, and 25 years later, the role of technology today. When we started talking about it, we realized, well, this is easy. There was none 25 years ago. No internet, no computers to speak of, very rudimentary sort of, call it list processing and word processing, basically no cell phones. You had these big clunky briefcases if you had anything like a then called mobile phone. So it's impossible for you to imagine. But you're trying to do all the same things in terms of communications and coordination and conveying information around an even much bigger organization. So we talked a little bit about that. It was interesting to me, having been there, that how primitive it was. And then you fast forward to what I mentioned, sort of Scott Dorsey's vision for how to make this the most connected Super Bowl ever. And it was incredible. One of the things I didn't talk about, I just loved, again, it was pretty high risk. You may know there's something called a clout score. So it's a measure that a company creates of each person's sort of significance in social media. How much they're on, how much their messages, their content is repeated and passed on, et cetera. So a clout score of 1 is the most influential person in the state in social media, and 50's 50th. So we invited the top 46 clout score people to the host committee offices for a night, fed them, wined and dined them, and just told them everything about what we were doing, hoping that they would just become our vehicle on their own to push stories, knowing that we couldn't possibly dictate to them what they were going to do or say. And it couldn't have worked better. Probably had to get to 50 to fill 46 slots. There were 3 or 4 in the top 46 that didn't come. But it was incredible, and there was a very interesting group of people, very diverse group of people, different opinions about what was important. And they just generated so much coverage that it was incredible. That was certainly one of the great benefits. But I think more than that, our own community learned about technology, and particularly communications. Different schools were involved in a social media center, or whatever we called it, staffing it. So here was a benefit I would never have expected. All these kids are monitoring all the traffic. We shut down one of the big carriers for a little while because of the volume. And when they're monitoring the traffic, they would be the first to know that a line was screwed up in front of the zip lines, or that there was a parking problem somewhere. So there wasn't the reason to deploy them, but very quickly they became a great communications, sort of operations communications function for us, and would allow us very quickly to deal with problems. That was one benefit I would have never expected. Yeah?
You described the woman who was in charge of the previous Super Bowl and, being afraid to look some people in the grocery store in the eye. So what's some interesting feedback you got from the presidents, this being a success?
Yeah, well, it's whatever you'd view as the opposite. I mean, honestly, I'm probably a weird person, but for me, I just want to move on. But you can't keep up with the letters and the messages, and Allison Millington and I were called over to the General Assembly and given this, watched the House and the Senate pass a joint resolution praising the Super Bowl, and the City County Council did it, and there's just limitless sort of praise, which is embarrassing because obviously something like this happens because so many capable people pull it off. But more importantly than the personal side of it, I think, is just we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the community feels great about it. And that will lead us to do big things, probably unrelated to sports, in the future, and that's really the point. Yeah.
Is there anything you wish you would have accomplished that you
You know, I don't know. Usually the question is, what went wrong? And it's really hard. This was, you sort of pinched yourself. I've been involved in other events, and there's always stuff that breaks and are real problems. Sometimes your goal is just to deal with them privately, and you know, the media and the public doesn't see it. This just didn't happen. I mean, the closest thing was the story I told you. We almost had a problem with the crowd, the overcapacity issue around the village, but I would rather not have had to deal with keeping the whole hotel community in limbo for all those months, but they did it, and they are not claiming that they suffered economically because of it. And the things that we tried to do worked better than we expected. So it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to answer that question with no. Nothing went wrong. It was better than we expected and hitting on all cylinders, and if the city does it again, somebody else can figure out what to do that we didn't do. Yes?
Have other potential host cities asked for your playbook?
Yeah. First of all, the league organizes that. You get it 4 years out, and then they tell you how many, you know, you're going to send 7 people to that Super Bowl and 20 to the next one, and in the one before you probably have we probably had 80 or 90 people in Dallas. So there's an organized process of osmosis or learning. And then they all come on their own. And all of them who have it, so that's New Orleans and New Jersey and Phoenix, are regular visitors. And you know, we're happy to give them everything, all the budgets, everything. But there is so little that's applicable that I'm not sure how much good it's going to do them. They're very different, you know, approaches. But they're students and they're here.
Last question. What was the corporate structure you eventually decided on, and is the corporation that the host committee sort of was, is it still in existence, and will it continue, or will it be dissolved after 2012?
Pre-law?
Sorry.
No, it's a good question. So we decided we needed 2 structures. Legally, we have a C6, which is kind of a not-for-profit that's a partnership. And we have a C3, which is a charitable organization. Both are not-for-profit, so we weren't paying taxes. The reason is because of where the money's going to come from and the way you're going to use it. The charitable stuff was more likely to come from foundations, which have to give to a C3 usually, and that would have been arts. There was some expenditure for the arts. It would have been some of the Super Bowl legacy stuff on the Near East Side in that neighborhood. C6 is a not-for-profit that's civic. It's a gross and imprecise definition, but that was everything else. Most of the money came in were just contributions from companies that were not charitable, and they could decide for themselves whether they could deduct them. So 2 structures. Today they both exist. We're still paying the very final bills and tallying all the revenues, and sometime before long, after we have an economic impact study for the whole community done, we'll put out our final accounting, although we're private, so we don't have to. I'll tell you that we ended up well. What you do not want is to be done and have a deficit, not be able to pay your bills. That's a real problem. You don't want to go back to anybody after it's over and ask for more money, and we will not have that problem. If we have a problem, it's going to be people wanting some back, because we probably erred on the side of making sure we were solvent at the end of the day. And then there were things that happened. We didn't have to buy hundreds of thousands of dollars of salt that we thought we were going to have to buy, given what we thought to expect. Well, my son, who's a sophomore at DePauw, is calling. So anyway, we ended up fine, and we'll close all the accounts. And I think the other thing is we got to decide, the community needs to decide if it's going to do it again. If they go again, they probably don't dissolve the entities and just keep them in place and change the name, and the purpose will be the 49th or 50th or 51st Super Bowl. It was a real, thank you all, it's a pleasure.